The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
So it's time to check in with CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day, who is also the editor of CoinDesk's State of Crypto newsletter. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, good morning. It was a pretty quiet day yesterday, eh?
Yeah, nothing happened at all. I mean, I don't know. I hope you got some naps in. Of course, FTX was a big story, but there was on a national scale an election. And as Congressman Himes has pointed out, we're not 100% sure on how the House of Representatives is going to shape up, though it looks like a 5-seat majority for Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans. The Senate looks to stay Democrat. So what exactly is going to happen crypto regulation-wise? Do you think that it is going to be this fight between the two chambers, or do you think that they actually can be on the same page going forward?
Well, the good news for the crypto industry is, by and large, crypto has been a pretty bipartisan issue. You have, lawmakers who are for it, lawmakers who are against crypto philosophically, but there's not really the same kind of political divide as we've seen with some other industries. Despite, sure, there are some Democrats who are perhaps more vocally anti-crypto than we see Republicans, but you also have quite a few pro-crypto Democrats. You have pro-crypto Republicans. So the short answer is, whatever legislative efforts are currently happening should not suffer too much next year. The DCCPA, the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act, which Sam Bankman-Fried was a supporter of, the lawmakers are, likely, it's a bipartisan effort, it's likely to continue. The question of whether or not it'll appear in the House is, I think, a fairly straightforward one. It's going to, whatever will happen, not for partisan issues, but because, whatever fundamental issues people might have with the bill. Same with the stablecoin legislation. Patrick McHenry and Maxine Waters are, on two sides of the aisle, but they've been working on this bill, and it seems pretty likely that they'll be able to bring it to the floor for at least a discussion next year, if not a vote and, seeing it pass into law. So the good news is we should see, a lot of these legislative efforts continue as they have been happening.
All right, zooming out, looking at the midterm election results, it wasn't the red wave that many people were anticipating and what the prediction market sites like Polymarket was predicting as well. So maybe you can explain what's going on here.
Yeah, no, it was a remarkably good night for the Democratic Party. Going in, we were looking at polls. If you're looking at prediction markets, you would be expecting a pretty massive GOP pickup in the House for sure, and possibly a pickup in the Senate. So for those of you watching, my view on prediction markets is that, you can have them, but I don't necessarily think that they are always accurate. And I'm looking back at 2020 when, they kind of basically tracked the polls and, right up until the night of, when suddenly, they flipped and said, Joe Biden might win this presidency. We saw that with prediction markets this year, where I think they were giving Republicans like a 65% chance of picking up the House and the Senate. You look last night, suddenly Democrats have an 80-something% chance of keeping the Senate. So, I think there's two different issues, right? There's polls and there's prediction markets. For prediction markets, one of the questions certainly has to be who exactly is voting on them and how in tune are they with, U.S. electoral system. In theory, according to the law, no U.S. users should be on them for the midterm election polls. So, what that means is you perhaps have people overseas who aren't, inundated with the U.S. electoral system the same way, some of us who live here might be. For the polls, this is actually an interesting question to me, because we've seen crypto polls or crypto industry participants, companies and groups put out polls. And one of the big questions I have about polling in general is, how are they reaching out to, respondents? And a lot of times that's like landlines and stuff. So there's kind of this generational shift, I think, where, millennials and Gen Z don't necessarily have landlines. They're not necessarily going to pick up and answer polling questions. And if you're talking about crypto in particular, if you look at the demographic breakdown of who owns crypto, it's very possible that a larger portion of people who are responding to the polls might not have an interest in crypto. So, I think the polling industry is probably going to have to ask itself some questions, but it has been a very interesting 12 something hours.